Welcome to Finance Files, a podcast hosted by best friends Brittany Carter and Whitney Coford with occasional appearances from my dad, Greg Coford.
We talk about all things finance, including investing, trading, economics, capital markets, and business management. Learn the investor mindset with us.
Disclaimer, this podcast is not investment advice. It is purely for entertainment purposes. So please make sure to do your own research before making any financial decisions.
We're your hosts. I'm Britt.
I'm Whit, and today is Topic Tuesday, where we're talking about personal budgeting.
Yeah, so yesterday we kind of got into the benefits of a budget and how it can be, what was my tagline? Expansive, not restrictive. For budgeting. But we, for Topic Tuesday, we're going to get into the topic of the different types of budgets there are. So maybe we can start with saying how we budget, and then we can get into a couple other methodologies that there are.
The way that I've budgeted has evolved over time. So when I very first started my first job, I didn't really have a budget. I just was excited to have a job. But I quickly realized that I needed a budget because the salary was not spectacular. It was a first-time job. And so I got really into tracking my expenditures versus my income. And like I said yesterday, I've always kind of been a saver, so I prioritized that pretty quickly. It was a really small amount. I think I started with like contributing $50 a month to my retirement account that my work provided. And then I think I was doing maybe like $100 a month towards savings. So started small. But I did get into tracking how much I was spending on rent versus groceries versus, my car payment and associated costs like gas, and then how much I had left over for, going out to eat or whatever. Now, honestly, I'm terrible at doing a budget in advance and then tracking it. I kind of do it just intuitively of like, oh, okay, I know that, this is approximately how much space in the budget, we have, and then just adjust accordingly. So this is talking about this. I'm like, oh, I should get back into actually tracking everything and budgeting. And so maybe that'll be my goal for the coming year. Just get back on the budget game. What about you, Britt? How did your budgeting evolve?
Well, I want to touch on what you said, which was like you have a good idea of what you spend. Like I think ultimately, like if you're the kind of person that doesn't have some crazy like doesn't have high variability in their like month on over month like spending habits, and generally underspends and is like good with saving, like I don't think people should glorify looking at spreadsheets all day and like going into the weeds for every single transaction, right? Like people can do that and still be really bad financially with their money. I see it all the time on our Meets podcast. So I think if you've figured out what your investment goals are and you've kind of like automated those and you're still staying under budget and everything, I don't think it's like you have to have a budget. You have to do it X way, right? It's more.
Well, thank you for validating my lack of discipline. Appreciate that.
Yeah, but
no, but I think it is. Yeah, no, I agree. I get what you're saying. I think it is like I don't need to be too hard on myself for not budgeting, but I also think I could be a little better about thinking about what are my goals and, what do I need in order to achieve those goals, and if there's a financial aspect, how can I do better at saving and actually working towards those goals?
Yeah, kind of what we mentioned about like the conscious spending. Like if there's something really like exciting you could be doing with your money that maybe you're not doing right now, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. So, I think mine evolved over time where I remember, well, when I first got out of college, I decided I wanted to live in New York, which is obscenely expensive. And so, man, I could write a novel on some of my like apartments in New York. Like it was not a matter of like let me get this to 20% of my salary. It was like what is the absolute cheapest thing I can find that can like fit a even just a full size bed. Like I don't even need it to be queen. Like I kid you not, there was this one apartment in Chelsea that I looked at, and it could barely fit a twin size bed, and it was like over 1,000 a month. But
Oh, that's
I know.
awful.
So I feel like a lot of it was like, all right, like what's the like absolute cheapest I can do? Because I couldn't even do, there's like this rule of, oh, you want to spend X percent. So like a really common one's like 50%, 20%, 30, where like 50% is going to needs, 20% to savings, 30% to wants. But when you're working with like a super low budget, like I was straight out of college working for a startup, it was like we just need to find the cheapest of everything. Um, and so yeah, I feel like I honestly like was not good at budgeting for the longest time. Like I would do it kind of in those life changes where it's like, oh, I moved to a new apartment or I did, XYZ differently. But to be honest, I think like a big mistake I made was kind of just like going with whatever, like my friends and stuff. Like I basically like let my lifestyle match my friends, and as we saw with my one friend, there's things going on behind the scenes with what they're doing that they might be actually saving more despite the fact that you guys are like maybe like going out the same amount, right?
It's really hard not to compare yourself to other people, right? Especially with social media. It's like, oh, well, this person lives by themselves in a really big apartment, and obviously that's something that you would want for yourself, when you're, especially when you're starting out. You have these big ideas of what it's like to live on your own, and I remember having to pick and choose what was most important. So like you said, right, I had roommates, and the apartment was maybe not as nice as I would have liked, and it was a little smaller, but having a big apartment was less important to me than being able to spend time with my friends and maybe go to Disneyland and do some of those more fun things that were going to create memories over what my living space looked like. So it's hard not to compare yourself.
Oh, for sure. And yeah, I'm totally the same way. I had roommates. This is actually, aside from a short stint in Switzerland, like the first time that I've lived alone. And like it's just because I'm a very social person, so I liked living with other people. And then, like you said, I can just then go spend all that money on things that I would rather spend my money on than just rent. But yeah, I think to that point too, like you just really don't know what's going on in other people's finances. Another one, I was just so confused. I was like, wow, she must be getting paid so much at her job for like she just had all the best clothes and we're still going out and everything. And then I found out her parents were giving her like a certain amount of money every month, someone else, not the one that was saving. uh and I was like, wow, okay, like you cannot just like benchmark yourself against this person because they're getting a leg up. Not to mention like they probably like they have a different job, they have a different salary, things like that. So yeah, when you're doing the budget, definitely, I think you should think about those things. Like, what are aspects of the my lifestyle with my friends that I do want to keep, but you need to realize that there might be some trade-offs, right? And those are going to be somewhat invisible to your day-to-day life. Like, I think that's the hardest thing with like savings, right? Because it's invisible. When you put those savings, maybe you end up not being able to go out as much, or you don't get to go grab a morning coffee with your coworker as often. And it sucks because you're going to feel that adjustment in your lifestyle, but the pain of not saving doesn't come till much later. It's like the delayed gratification element is so big. But yeah, so I definitely, I'm gonna be honest, I was like very bad at saving. I mean, I don't think that was, sounds like your parents didn't even have to model it for you, Whitney, but they did not model it for me, and I am not, I hate say like I I like saving money in the sense that like it's nice to have security, but I hate it in that like, and some people are like, oh, I even know what I would do with like that much money if I like came across this much money. And I'm like, oh, no problem. I can take care of that for you. Like I can spend money so easily. I love spending money. So I think that I really, really struggled with it for a very long time. And I think too that like a lot of the budgeting and kind of like financial freedom movements are like eat oatmeal for 20 years and then you'll be able to retire early and continue eating oatmeal. And that just doesn't, that never resonated with me. And I was so grateful when I found Ramit Sethi's book, I Will Teach You to Be Rich, and started listening to his podcast where I love that he focuses on spending meaningfully and consciously, right? And he still wants you to save. You need to have your money in investments, things like that. But it's this idea of like when you do have that disposable income, how can you spend it smartly and wisely? And I feel like I've been better about making those trade-offs of, like I said, I don't go out to restaurants that often. I cook really well. I make awesome like meals at home most of the time. And then I spend that money on trips, right?
So
And
are you
that,
making oatmeal at home then so you can spend on
I,
trips?
wait, I actually had oatmeal this morning.
Busted! You just said I don't want to have to eat oatmeal.
It's good every
I'm
once in a while. You're craving. But
So
may
I actually do have a serious question. So
yeah.
what made you want to start budgeting? Like what was kind of the impetus to start learning how to budget? Was there
Going
any
going into
particular
that.
going into debt? That'll do
Yeah,
it.
that'll do it. Yeah. I don't like paying the credit cards like 20% interest or whatever. Yeah. So I feel like the times, as bad as it sounds, like I wish I could just say, oh, I was inspired to take it. No, it was the pain of like, oh my gosh, you couldn't pay your credit card in full. And those have been the times that I'm like, okay, I need to like take this more seriously. And then I think too, like the more you can automate everything, the better. So, I had worked like when I was an analyst, we had a retirement program, so it was very easy to say, just take this percentage out of my paycheck every month, and it was just fully automated. And I think that that's an important aspect of like saving, like automate as much as possible, right? Because I think too, I worked for quite a few startups where we didn't have any sort of 401k or easy way for me to save towards a retirement account. And I, very honestly did not during those times. And so I definitely set myself back. And I'm sure I would have just ended up like you don't miss the money if it's not there. So the more you can automate, the better. And I think that's another budgeting strategy that's pushed a lot is the idea of sometimes they call it like the pay yourself first method, where it goes into the savings account at the beginning of the month or what have you. But try and like make sure that money going towards investments and savings is just as automated as possible, and like not and don't make it easy for you to get it out again. Like,
Yeah, when I started saving, even though it was a relatively low amount, that's what I did. I set it up so that like the day after my paycheck hit my bank account, it automatically would move whatever amount into my savings. And my rule was I was not allowed to touch, and it still is, not allowed to touch the savings unless it's an emergency or something I've specifically been saving for. And that emergency savings saved me more than once. So yeah, I'm with you. I think automating it's a good tool. And then you don't have to think about it. You set it and forget it. And if the money's not there to spend, you don't spend it, hopefully.
hopefully. But yeah, that and then I think some other budgets that we can just highlight is some people have the envelope budget, which I think is very hard with like how our society works today. I hate using cash, but you could in theory do you
What
have like
is the envelope budget?
you have an envelope for every like category of spending, like groceries, utilities, etc., and then you can only pull from that envelope. So it's like if you want to do fun stuff, it's just that envelope. But I personally think it's a little hard to do that these days because I mean I just hate using cash personally, but I know
I
there's
do
some
use that budget that it's not I don't use it for budgeting, but I use it if I'm gonna go somewhere where I really want to make sure I do not go above that. So, like a good example is Vegas. If you want to gamble, take
ah,
out cash, and that's all you're allowed to spend because then you're not tempted to, right? Like run the credit card and you lose track of how much you've spent so far. Because if it's cash, when it's gone, it's gone. So,
Wait, did I tell you about my gambling experience in Vegas, my first time gambling?
no.
Okay, so I was in Vegas and the person I was with wanted to go gambling. And I was like, hey, like I'll just take out $100 and that's all I can use. And I was in college, so that's not just like just $100. That
I
was
was
a
saving $100. Like, that was like the most I could do. So, yeah, 100 when you're at that age is a big deal.
that was a big deal. And I remember I started playing and I basically wasn't even playing. I was basically doing whatever he said because I didn't know. It was like craps and I still don't understand the rules because of what happened. I'm playing and I'm up for like 30 minutes. And then all of a sudden within 5 minutes, I lost all my money. And I remember just being like, wait a second. I just lost $100 in like 45 minutes. And I was like, I'm never doing this again. So I've done the
Yeah.
slots every once in a while as a joke, but never more than like $5 because after that I was done.
Yeah. Yeah, no, exactly. Well, and good thing you put a limit on it.
But so now I use Ramit Sethi's conscious spending plan. So the way that his budgeting system works is he has this thing called like fixed costs. And so that's your utilities, your car payment, your house, your rent, what have you. These kind of like fixed costs that just come every month, car insurance, health insurance. And the idea is those should be 50 to 60% of your net income. And then he pushes for on the investments for your retirement, it should be 5 to 10%, and that should be based off of where you've been at investing wise so far, right? And then how much you want to have when you retire. And then savings is 20%, which is both like just short term things that you want to accomplish, like that would be like a trip or something, right? And then also emergency savings if something bad happens. And then guilt free spending, which is my favorite part to spend, which is 23% of like whatever you want to spend it on, have fun, and buy things.
I feel like those percentages might have been tough for me in the beginning because like we were talking about like that nut, the rent and the car and the fixed stuff, that ends up taking up so much of your salary when you're just starting out. So I feel like you might have to be a little flexible on those percentages if your income is lower than.
Yeah, well, and he talks about that, like, if you're living in, New York City, like I was when I first got out of college, like, there's no way I'm going to be able to keep my, um, you know, housing costs low when I'm making basically pittance. But I think, yeah, I think it's a good, and I guess maybe that's another thing too, is like budgeting's a bit easier as you get older and you have more disposable income, right? Hopefully. But it
But
also just
ironically, it's so crazy important when you're young because then you can really dig into, okay, like where can I cut? And I mean, for me, the other thing that budgeting did when I was younger was I was like, oh crap, like I need to make more money. And so I was much more motivated, like to ask for a raise, or if I got approached about doing a one-off gig, I did stage managing when I was younger. And if I got approached for a one off gig, even if it meant like, oh my gosh, I'm going to be working 15-hour days or I'm going to have to do a lot more juggling with my schedule, I would say yes to that because I was so much more motivated because I had a budget and I knew there was a gap of this is how much I was making, this is what I need to be making. And so yeah, sometimes the answer is you need more income,
yeah.
unfortunately.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's also, though you're touching on a good thing of like maybe you add a side hustle or something, right? So like one thing that I've done is like if I wanted more guilt-free disposable income spending, then I could do like babysitting or something and then I could spend that guilt-free, right? Like finding ways to make more money is also another way to kind of circumvent your budget a bit. Like I think it's a little hard because you don't want to get in the habit of like, oh, I'll just earn it off and then you don't actually end up doing that, right? But if you can do other like if you really want something, if there is some sort of variable side gig that you can pull in, then maybe it's like, okay, it's not no, it's you need to do this extra work on top of your day job.
Well, it's interesting to me that you were in New York, I was in California. We were in completely different industries. You were in finance and I was in the nonprofit performing arts, and we still had pretty similar struggles, right? Like, oh, our salary's not enough to cover our nut. How do we, you know, get to the point where we can budget and save and all of that. So, it's just the struggle is real when you're young and just starting out, I guess, is the moral of the story.
Yeah, well, and I think the moral of the story too is like maybe it's not gonna be perfect, it's not gonna be these perfect ratios, but just get in the habits early because, like I said, I feel like a lot of I could have done a much better job just getting in the habit of saving because I feel like the only times I was good about it in my 20s was when it was just that set it and forget it automated version, which you should still do, but I worked for quite a few startups where that just wasn't a thing, and I just really wish I had taken that extra step and set up my own self-directed retirement funds to get siphoned out because I totally lost out on, a lot of years of compounding interest and just having that discipline that's needed for long-term planning. Well, and on that note, I think that we're beating a dead horse at this point. Long story short, you should budget, automate as much as you can. And, even if you're in the younger side and like we totally empathize, it's getting harder and harder. I mean, I honestly don't know how people live off minimum wage in California these days. Um, Try your best to create that discipline now. And you can utilize budgeting as a way to be conscious about where you're directing your money and have it be expansive rather than restrictive. Tune in tomorrow for Way Back Wednesdays. We mentioned some facts about housing and cars, and I think everyone's worried about rising housing prices. So I nerded out to figure out what we were budgeting and spending our money on way back when. So be sure to tune in.